President Bola Ahmed Tinubu meets with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa in New York. Governor Malam Umar Namadi vowed to monitor the performances of his commissioners and heads of ministries. First-class clashes reported in Port Sudan since war began. Today is Tuesday, 4th of Rayuwa 1445 after the Hijrah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is equivalent to 19th of September 2023. I'm Khadija Nulamin and Lehman with the news in 4. President Bola Tinubu yesterday held what has been described as a very fruitful cross-sectoral discussion with his counterpart of South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa in New York. Tinubu, who arrived in the City of the United Nations headquarters yesterday, joins other world leaders in the United States to attend the 78th United Nations General Assembly. The special advisor to the President of Media and Publicity, Ajuri Ngalale, in a statement noted that President Tinubu is expected to meet with other presidents at the Assembly, which continues until September 26th. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has held a very fruitful cross-sectoral discussion with South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa as the first of many bilateral engagements with counterparts from multiple continents in New York City ahead of the United Nations General Assembly. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has said Africa must have a consensus view that the hundreds of billions of dollars spent through international development finance institutions over the years must meet the specific needs of developing democracies in Africa, even if it is done with exclusive regard for their own enlightened self-interest. President Tinubu stated this yesterday during an extensive bilateral discussion with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa ahead of the United Nations General Assembly. The president, who advances economic development diplomatic drive for investment attraction, said during the end of the Second World War, the Marshall Plan was established for reconstruction and economic restoration of European nations through Bretton Woods institutions. The South African president emphasized that history has proven that Nigeria and South Africa can move the world on matters of mutual concern when the two nations operate on the same wavelength. The President Bola Tinubu has approved the appointment of 18 special advisors and senior special assistants to actualize the agenda of the federal government across the different sectors of the economy. The Director of Information Office of the Vice President, Olushola Abiola, made this known in a statement yesterday in Abuja. Mr. Abiola said that the team, comprising 6 special advisors and 12 senior special assistants, will work in the office of the Vice President, Kashim Shettima, to support the renewed hope agenda of the Tinubu administration. He said that the appointment in the Vice President office include Rukaya El-Rufai, Special Advisor to the President on National Economic Council and Climate Change, as well as Tope Kolade Faswa, a Special Advisor to the President on Economic Matters. He said that Aliu Modibo was appointed as the Special Advisor General Duties, Hakim Baba Ahmed, Special Advisor Political Matters, and Jumoke Oduwole, Special Advisor to the President on Presidential Enabling Business, Environment Council, and Investment. Mr. Abiola said others include Sadiq Wanka, Special Advisor to the President on Power Infrastructure, Usman Muhammad, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Administration and Office Coordination, and Kingsley Nwokcha, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Communications, among others. The meeting between the federal government and the Nigerian Labour Congress (NLC) to avert an imminent strike action ended without a concrete resolution to the union's demands. The Minister of Labour and Employment, Simon Lalong, and Minister of State for Labour and Employment, Nkiruka Onyejocha, met with the NLC President Joe Ajaero and other leaders in Abuja in an effort to stop organized labor from embarking on another industrial action. The meeting is expected to continue at a later date. However, the minister is also expected to hold a meeting with the leadership of the Trade Union Congress (TUC) today. The impasse followed Lalong's invitation to the NLC for a meeting in light of the union's planned nationwide strike owing to the removal of fuel subsidies and the hardship in the country. Earlier, the minister invited the NLC and the Trade Union Congress for talks to avert the two-day strike held between September 5th and 6th. During yesterday's meeting, Lalong promised to partner with organized labor to address the demands of the labor unions in a just and balanced way. He appealed to the labor leaders to be realistic and frank in the discussion. The Nigerian Labour Congress (NLC) has criticized the federal government over its failure to meet the demands of the union, nearly 4 months after ending the fuel subsidy regime, which is gearing up to embark on an indefinite strike in light of economic hardships in the country. Among its demands are to address the consequences of petrol price hikes, review the minimum wage, provide a workable roadmap to the CNG alternative, fix the country's refineries, and pay lecturers' salary arrears. Hours after a second meeting with the federal government ended in a deadlock yesterday, NLC President Joe Ajaero underscored the union's frustration. He said the union agreed that the federal government has had more than enough time for the past 4 months and that even if there is a commitment between now and the next 4 days, issues will be resolved. You are listening to the news from the studio of Sawaba. Stay tuned for the rest. Welcome back. Jigawa State Governor Umar Namadi has said his government plans to hold top officials accountable for the performance of their respective ministries, departments, and agencies in the drive to implement the administration's vowed commitment to uplift the economic status of the people of the state. Malam Umar Namadi disclosed this during his opening remarks at a retreat of members of the Jigawa State Executive Council and other top government officials held yesterday in Kaduna. The governor said he intended to track the activities of the heads of the MDAs by defining specific milestones and performance indicators, emphasizing the importance of real-time performance assessment. He also addressed the ongoing challenges faced by the state despite several years of success stories across various sectors. Namadi expressed his concerns about key human development indices that continue to depict a grim picture. He also highlighted the need for a revised approach to implementing initiatives and interventions and stressed the importance of practical improvement in the socio-economic well-being of Jigawa citizens with measurable impact on national surveys. The governor of Katsina State, Dikwarada, said his administration has employed 7,326 teachers for the state basic and secondary schools, underscoring his dedication to depoliticizing the educational system. The governor said that a thorough screening process was used to produce the employment figure and that World Bank representatives had also acknowledged it. He reiterated his commitment to ending political activities in the education sector. He claimed that hiring decisions in the past frequently were made without regard to an applicant's qualifications, reaffirming that those times were now behind the state recruitment process for educators. Many people, mostly farmers, were reportedly killed and many others displaced during attacks by bandits on 7 villages at the border between Kebbi and Sokoto states. The villages include Zawaini, Jangargari and Jaja in Kebbi State, as well as Karani and 3 others in Sokoto State. Many houses and shops were also said to be set ablaze during the attack. It was gathered that the incident forced many residents to flee and take refuge at Jarkuka village in Rayuwa local government area of Kebbi State. Governor Nasser Idris was said to have directed that relief items be distributed to those displaced. The governor has sent a team led by the Commissioner for Humanitarian Affairs and Empowerment, Muhammad Hamidu Jarkuka, and the Commissioner for Information and Culture, Yakubu Ahmad, to deliver the items to the victims. Children have returned to school in a number of towns and villages hard hit by the deadly earthquake that struck Morocco more than a week ago. Lessons resumed yesterday in the towns of Amiz and Asni in the high Atlas Mountains and some villages in the Tarudan province in the southwest, according to the independent Lacom website. The education department in El House province was cited as saying that local authorities had set up 150 special tents equipped with teaching supplies and essentials where classes will take place. Those set up by the army in Amiz were waiting to be installed with mobile education units. Meanwhile, around 6,000 students enrolled in the schools in 6 municipalities most affected in El Hawaz are being bused to schools in the nearby city of Marrakesh. Fighting between the two rival factions of the Sudanese military has spread to the Red Sea city of Port Sudan for the first time in 5 months of conflict. Sudanese soldiers exchanged fire with members of a tribal militia group which calls itself the Forces of the Eastern Sudan Parties and Movement Alliance. The troops tried to remove checkpoints set up by the group in the center of the city. The city is also where some government officials and United Nations agencies have relocated amid the fighting in the capital, Khartoum, and elsewhere in the country. Clashes between the Sudanese army and the rival paramilitary rapid support forces have left thousands of people dead since violence broke out in the capital Khartoum in April. Hundreds of residents of the eastern Libyan city of Derna on Monday protested against local authorities more than a week after heavy floods killed thousands in the city. The protesters criticized the leader of Eastern Libyan's parliament, Agula Saleh, and local authorities that they blamed for the floods that have killed nearly 4,000 people. The protesters said they wanted speedy investigations into the disaster and legal action against the leaders responsible. They also demanded compensation, investigations into the city's finance, and the rebuilding of Derna. Eastern Libya is governed by a parallel government separate from the United Nations recognized government based in Libya's capital, Tripoli. Several expert and humanitarian organizations have suggested that the floods could have been averted if local authorities evacuated residents or at least communicated the warnings about Storm Daniel. Experts have also said that the neglect of the city's dams by authorities led to their bursting and the unleashing of flood waters. The protesters also burned the house of Derna's mayor Abdul Menam Al-Gaidi. Abdul Menam Al-Gaidi, along with other Derna municipal officials, have since been suspended by the Eastern Libya Prime Minister Osama Hamad. That has been end of the news. But before I go, recap of the major stories. You heard President Bola Ahmed Tinubu meet with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa in New York. Governor Malam Umar Namadi vowed to monitor the performances of his commissioners and heads of ministries. First clashes reported in Port Sudan since war began. On behalf of the news department, our editor Haruna Ahmad Bultua, our continuity announcer Halima Hassan Ibrahim, I am Khadija Nulamin Edleman saying thanks for listening.